So the third core benefit of a cash value life insurance policy is that the cash value is tax-free. Sounds great, doesn't it? Well, it's tax-free if we do everything properly. And I am so big on throwing that word if in there, not to cause doubt or anything like that. The main reason why is because life insurance can and frequently is used as a means to build cash value tax-free and access the cash value tax-free. That's why so many people are attracted to it. However, there are occasions that can result in taxable events. One, which many people are familiar with, is an MEC. This stands for Modified Endowment Contract. We've got a ton of content that provides a full breakdown on what a MEC is, what a MEC limit is. You can actually set your MEC limit on any cash value life insurance policy. When we design the product to minimize expenses and maximize cash value, the MEC limit's very important to look at. We've got a couple of videos here that provide full details on what the Modified Endowment Contract is, how it works, and a whole lot more. Another taxable event. So the cash value can be accessed tax-free if we do so properly. If you were to cash out a policy or surrender a policy, that can result in a taxable event. If we have a large loan balance on a policy and it lapses, that can result in a taxable event. Depends on what my cost basis is, what my cash value is, and how much has been taken from the policy in loans and withdrawals. We've got videos over here that provide more information on taxes and when they can occur with cash value life insurance policies that are non-MECs. So what we really want to focus on in this video is, if it is tax-free, what does that actually look like for you, especially if you're comparing it to other assets? Because that happens quite a bit, and I run into this a lot with individuals who are paying in quite a bit, the same dollar amount that corporations are. So we work with corporations and individuals. When I say individuals paying in the same dollar amount that corporations are, I'm referring to people that are paying in $500,000 or more, perhaps it's $1 million per year, into a cash value life insurance policy. They'll often heavily look at the internal rate of return and say, I think, that's attractive to me for a safe area to position money, but I think that I can do better elsewhere. I like to keep my money at work, in motion. I've got to really understand how this works and if it's a benefit for me. So a taxable equivalent is something that's very valuable to look at here. Let's have some fun looking at a taxable equivalent, shall we? So taxable equivalent, what does that mean? If you're going to earn a rate of return in another asset class, perhaps it's the stock market, what's going to happen there? Well, if I'm earning 6, 7, or 8% in the stock market, that is a taxable account. So if I'm earning 8%, that is 8% before taxes. So when it comes time to pay those taxes, how do I pay them? I can pay them out of pocket, or I can net my account to actually cover those taxes. And there are several tax strategies that are used to lower taxes. I'm not a tax professional, not a CPA, none of this is tax advice. But we've got our before tax returns. So what this means is I've got my tax bracket here, and we're just going to look at a couple different examples. We can make the rate whatever we want. 30% tax bracket, 40%, 50%, maybe we're in a very high tax bracket, maybe we lower it down to 20%. The question is this: if I'm earning 7% before taxes, and I'm in a 40% tax bracket, what's left over? What's my net return? Let's take a look, shall we? So we're going to have some fun here. What we've got, cool calculator. Let's just plug in 100 grand. 1 year, interest rate, 7%. So 7% of 100 grand comes out to what? $107,000, pretty straightforward. Now, if we're going to take taxes out, before we just jump to the 40%, if we are in a 20% tax bracket, what does this do? Well, we've got 20% taxes to account for. Plugged in our tax rate. There's the annual taxes. Actual yield, 5.6%. So the question that one begins to ask here is, okay, if I can earn 7% in the market, for instance, without any trouble at all, and I'm in a 20% tax bracket, I'll net out at 5.6% over here. Okay, sounds great. Is that something I'm comfortable with, taking on the amount of risk I have to get a 7% return? Let's assume I'm at a 30% tax bracket. If it keeps going higher, what you'll notice is more and more taxes due. So if I'm at a 40% tax bracket, my actual yield comes out to 4.2%. If I feel I can average 8%, and I'm still in a 40% tax bracket, there's my actual yield. The actual yield represents what I am earning after taxes. So 4.8% there. And what we can do here, if we lower the tax bracket, obviously my actual yield will go up. Can I earn this year in and year out? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it depends who I'm working with and such. I've got another column here that represents fees, right? So if we have 7% and a 40% tax bracket, what was that before? Let's go back just to that one, 7%, 40% bracket. To use this example, I've got 4.2%. Assuming you earn 7% year in and year out. After those taxes that I have to account for, I've got 4.2% left over. What about fees? Am I doing this on my own? Am I working with a wealth manager that's charging me fees? I want to add something on this point because the industry I'm in, the insurance industry, tends to go to war with itself. The financial services industry, oftentimes you'll have a financial professional who carries a Series 7, Series 63 license. These are licenses that allow you to sell investments and carry an insurance license. And what frequently happens is you'll have someone who is very, very pro stock market or wealth management, and then someone who's pro life insurance, and they battle with each other and beat each other up. Here's an example. I would say to you, hey, you might be able to get 8% in the market, or let's say 7% in the market, but after we factor in taxes, you're left over with 4.2%. And if we factor in a 1% management fee there as well, now all of a sudden, what are we going to have here? Our actual yield now comes down to 3.56%. And that's assuming you get 7% every single year. We know there's ups and downs, making the wealth manager not look so good. Then the wealth manager will come back and say, did you know whole life insurance averages out between 1% and 2%? You have negative equity in the early years. Again, they fight with each other. And if you ever see that, or if you ever have experienced that as a consumer, I would encourage you just to continue to ask questions about the product or service you are interested in from the individuals that you prefer to work with. Try not to get caught up in that war. It's kind of useless. I've got mixed opinions when it comes to working with wealth managers who charge a fee. Like, here's how I look at it. I would ask this question. If you could work with Ray Dalio, you know who he is? Well, let's say Warren Buffett, and they offered to manage your funds personally, your money personally, how much would you pay them, knowing that your money's in their control from a wealth management perspective? Ray Dalio, you could actually invest with his company. I believe the minimum fee, there's a minimum buy-in balance and a minimum fee I believe starts out at $500,000. Is it worth it though? I mean, that's one of the most successful hedge funds in the world when you look at Ray Dalio. A lot of people would, especially perhaps you're a business owner that says, hey, I like what Ray Dalio does. He really knows his stuff. I'm going to plop a big pile of money with him and I don't have to think about it. I know down the road I should have my money. Granted, it's in the market, I have risk, but he seems to know his stuff. Yes, he's worth paying. He's got a good reputation, all that good stuff. My point is, would you pay for an expert like him? A lot of people do, and a lot of people do very well. So where I'm going when I say that is I don't want to just beat up someone who's going to charge a fee. I don't agree with that, because if they're good at what they do and that's how they make their money, yeah, check them out for a bit. If you don't like it, that's okay, then don't do it. Let's not sling mud at the other individual. My point to all of this, to get back on track with the taxable equivalent, 7%, right? If that's what you can do before taxes, depending on what tax bracket you're in, let's kick it down to 30%. What would that come out to? Same thing. It's pretty cool when you can just plug in the rates, isn't it? 4.9%, plug in 20%, you're 5.6. So 4.9, assuming you're in a 30% bracket. with taking on that type of risk, and we know 7 year in and year out for a long duration is going to be difficult to do, but it is possible to average that out. Taking on that type of risk, or just getting this, because remember, it's tax-free if we do everything properly, without having to think about it. Is that something that is appealing to you, or is it not? And if it's not, that is okay. It's just understanding the pros and cons of different strategies. A lot of people will diversify here. So let's take a look at the internal rates of return. We're going to look at a policy we looked at earlier in this series, look at the internal rates of return, and then the taxable equivalents. So this may look familiar from a couple of videos ago. Here's the 10-pay policy on a 40-year-old individual funding $100K per year for 10 years. Break-even point, year 4. You will notice that the average internal rate of return is positive when he breaks even. When he has less money than what he's paid into the product, the average internal rate of return is negative. Annual IRR, first year, negative, second year, negative. Why the annual IRR is negative is because I have less money that's coming back to cash value than what I'm paying in. Example, year 1, you pay in $100K, you've got $89,500. This means you lost about $10,500, hence the 10.5%, just about, a little bit less. Year 2, you pay in $100K, grows from 89 to 186. If it was 0%, it would grow to 189, negative 1.78, because I got less than the 100K back I paid in. That's the annual IRR. Positive next year, because I get more money back than what I've paid in. This isolates each year. Okay, so here I've got the internal rates of return, and if I don't make the policy or trigger a taxable event, I can access this money tax-free. Beautiful feature of life insurance without any risk. Peace of mind product is often what I like to refer to it as. Now, the question is if I'm in a 30% tax bracket, what would I have to earn in order to get, let's call it 4% or 5%? That's annual. If I want to look at the average, let's go down a little bit here. Year 20, just about 4.25%. Go up a little bit more. There we go. Let's take a look, shall we? So here we've got some taxable equivalents, and this is based on a 30% tax bracket. Let's shrink this down a little bit. There we go. Okay. So what this means, no fees in here, just 30% taxes off the top. Granted, there's different ways to calculate this, and these I based it off of income tax, and I've got the whole capital gains tax and everything else. And who knows what's going to happen with that? It changes so often, or there's always speculation around it. Year 10, annual IRR, 4.08%. Average IRR, 3.02%. So looking at the average internal rate of return, over 10 years, I've paid in $1 million. If my policy did exactly as illustrated, which won't happen, or likely won't happen, if that occurs, I'll have just over 3%. That is an effective tax-free internal rate of return, which means I would have to earn 4.3% in a taxable account. After the taxes are paid, I'd be left over at 3.02%. Looking at the annual, 4.04%, look at that, and earn 5.84%. So this does help just put things into perspective. Some people like to look at this. We don't look at it that often. If you look at all of our content, we've got a couple of videos sprinkled in on this. Some people do really like to analyze this. But I will say most we work with that are interested in cash value life insurance products are not really focused on the return. They want to maximize the internal rate of return. How do I get it as high as possible? But then I've got this safe, liquid, tax-free area. I've got a healthy death benefit. But as I look at the cash value, that's a nice alternative to money that I had in cash, just sitting in the bank, that I can now use for other opportunities. That's often the appeal with a lot of people we work with. But this is looked at. by that higher net worth individual. And also corporations will look at this as well when we work with them. Not always the taxable equivalent, but they're focused on the internal rate of return. Let's look at a higher tax bracket, shall we? Let's take a look at 40% here. We're just gonna bump the tax bracket up. Perfect. Okay, so same thing. Internal rates of return are identical compared to what we looked at before. Only difference is now we've got a 40% tax bracket, which means I'd have to earn on an annual basis north of 8%, but that's year over year. If we look at the average, I have to hit a pretty high average. Well, it depends how far down we go too, just to be fair here. If we look at year 25, when he's 65 years old, I have to average out almost 7.4%, assuming I stay in that 40% tax bracket. Again, there's a lot of different ways you can slice this, but when comparing the tax-free internal rate of return, if I am comparing it, it's beneficial to look at these different assumptions here, if that makes sense. Hope you enjoyed this one. I always like going through this. If you'd like to go through it personally, feel free to reach out anytime. Our team can help. I'll talk to you too if I have time. Please hit the like button, subscribe for more if you enjoyed, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again. Hey guys, Steve Parisi here. If you enjoyed the content you just saw, please subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell for future videos. If you'd like more information or to see some custom policies for yourself, feel free to call or email our offices at the contact information below.